Happy Halloween, everybody! And since it is Halloween, I thought it'd be great to do yet another top 10 match list. I know a lot of people seem to enjoy my top 10 wrestling match trilogies list, but this one's going to be a little bit different. Instead of looking at overall quality of wrestling matches or trying to rank them based on what's better than the other, this list is going to pertain to matches that fit the Halloween season. I don't know about you guys, around Halloween time and Christmas as well, there's a tendency for people to watch things, whether it's good or bad, doesn't matter. They tend to watch things that fit the season and get them in the mood for the season. Again, whether that thing is terrible or it's great, doesn't matter. If it fits the season and it gets them in the mood for the holiday, they'll watch it. I mean, I can't speak for everybody doing that. I know I do it. I mean, for fuck's sake, I watch Godzilla's Revenge for Halloween, so, you know. It's just one of those things that a lot of people do. And wrestling could probably be the same way. If you asked me to put together like a wrestling match playlist of matches that I would consider to be capturing the spirit of Halloween and fitting the season, that list is going to include downright awful matches, might include some great matches, but like I said, quality is not going to necessarily be the key here. The key here is overall, how do these matches capture the spirit of Halloween, and are they worth watching at Halloween time to really get you in the mood for it? So, without further ado, let's go ahead and check out those creepy, over-the-top, theatrical, spooky matches that we've gotten over the last few decades. For the number 10 spot, I had two options that I was kind of arguing with and had a tough time picking it. It was either going to be this match or it was going to be the Undertaker versus Undertaker match from SummerSlam 1994. I eventually settled on the Hogan Giant Halloween Havoc 95 main event for a couple of reasons. One, Undertaker's going to be all over this list, so I figured, one less Undertaker match isn't going to hurt anything. And two, I thought Halloween Havoc would be a good way to start off the list, right? I mean, there's an event called Halloween Havoc in wrestling's history, so what better way to pay homage to the holiday of Halloween than starting off with Halloween Havoc? And number three, the Undertaker versus Undertaker match is bad, and the Giant Hogan match is bad, but the Hogan Giant match is so spectacularly, hilariously bad, I had to go with that one. It's just like, yeah, but this one's more fun in how bad it is. For those of you who don't remember the event, this was at the time where Hulk Hogan was feuding with the Dungeon of Doom, and they had their secret weapon. They had the Giant, the son of Andre the Giant, who he's not really the son of Andre the Giant, that's just a kayfabe thing, but yeah, Paul Wyatt, the Big Show, this was his big break into the national wrestling scene. Debuted as Andre the Giant's son. This was actually, I believe, his first official match with the company. And I like that part of the angle that Andre's son was coming back to get revenge on Hogan for beating him at WrestleMania 3. The rest of it, though, was ridiculous. With the Dungeon of Doom acting as these really cartoony supervillains that are dedicated to destroying Hulk Hogan for some reason. And it really came to a head at this particular event. First of all, before the main event, for some reason, Hulk Hogan and the Giant had to face each other in a monster truck sumo match where basically both competitors are driving monster trucks that are chained to each other at the front, and they're basically trying to push each other outside of a circle on top of a nearby arena. And I was looking at this, like, even as a kid, I was like, this is stupid. Like, and even Bobby Heenan on commentary was saying things like, this is exciting. And I get this feeling that Bobby was being sarcastic. But, yeah, the whole setup, the trucks themselves looked really silly and over the top, and the whole setup was really ridiculous. And it ended with Hulk Hogan winning, because of course, I mean, naturally, Hulk Hogan would be perfect for driving sumo truck, or monster trucks. And so Hogan wins, And Giant gets pissed off and gets out of the monster truck and starts trying to attack Hulk Hogan and tries to throw him off the top of the building. They scuffle. Hogan defends himself. Giant falls off the top of the building. What? I mean, at least I'll give him credit. At least Hogan tried to save him and looked like he felt bad about knocking him off the top of the building, and he was acting in self-defense. In a lot of cases, like the babyface would just throw him off. He's like, "Yeah, I'm awesome." Because baby faces are horrible, attempted murderers. We're psychopaths. Yeah. Roman Reigns, I'm looking at you. And so they tried to play it up like the main event wasn't going to happen. I'm like, why are they doing this attempted, like the Giant might be dead thing? And then, of course, main event time rolls around and the Giant goes out there, like, completely unscathed. And I'm like, okay. Sure, I mean, that takes the whole monster thing and pushes it to a whole other level where he gets knocked off the top of a building and somehow emerges completely unscathed, but okay. And the match itself was pretty much a typical Hogan versus Big Man match. There wasn't really a whole lot else to it. Giant was a little green at this point. Big Show would become a lot more polished as the years would go on, but he was, I mean, as far... In 1991, the WWF gave us a feud for the ages, and it was really almost like a match made in heaven to have these two characters feud with each other. You had the Ultimate Warrior, who was completely insane, bright, colorful, and completely bonkers, but superhuman as well. And on the other side, you had the Undertaker, who was dark, slow, methodical, spooky, and also superhuman as hell. So putting the two together was actually, like, perfection. And the matches on paper were intriguing. The first time I ever saw these two wrestle each other, though, it was the Rampage 1991 Coliseum videotape, a tape that I have referenced multiple times on this channel. I don't know why that one sticks out in my mind so much, but in any case, the main event on the tape was a match between Undertaker and Ultimate Warrior. And even at the young age that I saw it in, I thought the match sucked. I thought it was kind of boring. I thought Undertaker just had the Iron Claw on Ultimate Warrior for almost the entire match, and it was just kind of a dull match, and not what you would expect out of those two. Years later, I would discover that these two were having body bag matches across the country on the house show circuit, and they were kind of like, those were like the feature matches of whatever towns that they were working. And I have seen one of those matches. It was an MSG show in, I believe, June of 91. I don't remember the exact date of it, but it's a video that I found online somewhere years ago. And every once in a while, around Halloween time, I'll give it a watch because it is a much better match than the Rampage 91 match that I watched. And it's closer to what you would expect out of those two. It's a little weird, high energy. You got Ultimate Warrior pile driving the Undertaker multiple times, and Undertaker keeps sitting up. You get the no selling. You get the superhuman stuff from both guys. And the gimmick of the body bag match was kind of the precursor to the casket match. It was basically, to win, you would have to put your opponent in a body bag and zip it shut. Again, very similar to what the casket match would ultimately become. Body bag takes a little bit more time to do that, though, so the casket match probably works better in that regard. But it did make for some awesome visuals throughout the match, namely in the finish where Warrior defeated The Undertaker, and Undertaker sat up while still in the body bag, so he had like this black body bag, like, just sit up, and it looked kind of silly, but it also looked like something out of a horror movie, so it kind of worked in a lot of different ways. And like I said, Warrior got the win after he hit Undertaker with the urn. I think that's another thing that really helped this match. I think Warrior and Taker working no DQ matches gave him a little bit more to play with and made the matches a little bit better. So, yeah, the body bag match is one of those hidden gems in WWE's history, and one that I kind of wish had shown up on pay-per-view at one point. It's one of those things I go back to SummerSlam 91, and man, instead of doing Hogan and Warrior versus Slaughter, Adnan, and Mustafa long after the war with Iraq was over, or the Gulf War was over, I would have liked to have seen Jake versus Hogan and Taker versus Warrior. and Taker beats Warrior, and that sets up Taker for the Hogan match at Survivor Series. That's what I would have liked, but what do I know? But in any case, I think the body bag match is worth checking out. It's one of those, again, it's one of those rare kind of like hidden gems that's a lot of fun and kind of cool and kind of neat, and definitely worth watching. Yeah, TNA makes the list. Good for them. The Monsters Ball match is one that's become kind of a tradition with TNA, and one of their feature hardcore matches, even though in later years it's really not any different from any other street fight, so I don't really understand what the difference is between a Monsters Ball and, say, a street fight or a no DQ match or whatever, but the reason the first one stands out and as being a little bit more Halloween-y, first of all, it has Raven in it, and if you have Raven in it, that definitely helps on the creep factor, but another aspect of the match was that it was originally set up so that the three participants, Monty Brown, the alpha male, one of TNA's greatest failed experiments, who should have been a big star for them, but whatever, the Monster Abyss, who's still there today, and Raven would be locked in an isolated chamber, or I guess you could say solitary confinement, for 24 hours prior to the match. So throughout the pay-per-view, Victory Road 2004, we had little vignettes of all three guys sitting in seclusion with the night vision and everything. It was kind of creepy and kind of weird and kind of an interesting setup. I remember when Monty Brown walked out for his entrance, he sold it like he hadn't seen light in 24 hours. And but all three guys looked a little disoriented when they went out there, which is part of the gimmick. And that's one of those things I kind of wish they had kept that as part of the Monsters Ball match. That was one thing that made that match stand out a little bit. I guess it's a minor detail, but it's one that at least separates it from normal no DQ matches. And this was a big match for TNA initially. This was their first 3-hour pay-per-view. And on this 3-hour pay-per-view, this was the match that had thumbtacks and kind of the hardcore craziness. Even though they would surpass it in future versions of the Monsters Ball with what the crazy stuff they would do with flaming tables and barbed wire and all sorts of other nutty stuff. Janice, the 2x4 with nails in it. This was kind of a big step for them to do something like this. And again, it was a lot of fun. It was probably the best match from the first Victory Road, their first ever 3-hour pay-per-view. So it was a bit of a success. It's the first match I remember TNA doing that got a "This is awesome" chant, which, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the "This is awesome" chants, it is an indicator that TNA was onto something here with the hardcore stuff, although poor Abyss would be taking tack bumps for the next decade and a half of his career. Poor sap. But in any case, with the crazy characters involved, the crazy setup, and some of the hardcore violence throughout the match, I thought this match definitely fit the season of Halloween and definitely worth checking out for those reasons. WCW makes the list again, and their entry is terrible. Again, Sting versus Vampiro in the Human Torch match from Great American Bash 2000, the final Great American Bash under the WCW brand. This match is a little weird, to say the least. Sting and Vampiro had been feuding at this point, and Vampiro was coming in to WCW and was kind of... they were kind of positioning him to be kind of the successor to Sting, to kind of be the next version of Sting, or kind of like an evil version of Sting. So it was natural to put them together in a feud. This match was very weird, though. A Human Torch match where the winner would be the one that sets his opponent on fire. They had a torch on stage, and it would just be up to the two competitors to try and set each other on fire. Sting came out pre-match, and for his entrance, he... kind of rappelled down, took the torch, and rappelled back up and put it on top of the big screen, not the Titantron, but WCW's equivalent of that, like Nitrovision, I think it was called, or something like that. So Sting set it up, was like, "You want to set me on fire? We got to fight all the way up there and do it." I'm like, why? That's just makes it more dangerous for no reason. But anyway, the match itself, not very good, mainly because Sting ultimately lost, and it was not him that got set on fire, thank God. It was a stuntman. And because the stuntman was taking the bump and not Sting, they had to basically darken the lights in the arena while they were fighting on top of the Tron. And it was very clear that they were taking steps to hide the fact that it wasn't Sting who was going to get set on fire and then fall off the giant screen. So, but in doing so, it made the match kind of dull and made it kind of boring. But we did get a big bump out of it, and it does have kind of that spooky atmosphere to it of, you know, the tension that somebody's going to get set on fire. And the two characters, Sting and Vampiro, are perfect for a setting like that. I think this match could have worked if they had planned it out a little bit better, but as is, it was just another failure from WCW. Another TNA match makes the list, and it's another good one. The homicidal, suicidal, genocidal Madman Sabu takes on Abyss in TNA's first ever barbed wire massacre, one of the most violent matches that company has ever done. And to be perfectly honest, if I had to summarize it, it would be the Rob Zombie movie of wrestling matches. It is just straight up blood and guts, violence for the sake of violence, and really hard to watch at points and how violent it does get. It's bloody, grotesque, and everything in between, and it actually came off well and was a big success for TNA at the time. And when you have a madman like Sabu and a monster like Abyss facing off against each other in an environment like this, it makes for some visual intrigue, if nothing else. So, yeah, very entertaining match, very violent and a little gruesome, but perfectly fitting within the spirit of Halloween and the horror movies, like I said, of the more grotesque variety. Next up, we have a recent one from this year's Payback event. The WWE gave us the final chapter in the Randy Orton Bray Wyatt saga, or at least I hope it's the final chapter. The House of Horrors match, where Randy Orton had to go to Bray Wyatt's home and face off against him, and all the creepy surprises that Bray Wyatt had waiting for him. At the time this match happened, a lot of people said it looked like something out of a horror movie. I disagree. It looked like a horror movie trailer. The way it was cut and the way it was edited, it looked like a big hype for the next big horror movie to come out that would probably suck. And yeah, this match is going to be listed as one of the worst matches of the year. And I fully agree. It just, it didn't make much sense. It didn't look that great. The story as it evolved was basically just Randy Orton going from room to room. One room would have dolls in it, and then Bray Wyatt would jump out and attack him. And that was basically that on repeat the entire way through. But there were some creepy images, and they did try to have like an atmosphere there, and it was one of the more spectacular failures from the WWE this year, so it's definitely memorable. So, yeah, not a match I would ever say is good, but if you want to see something a little spooky, a little weird, and a little offbeat, this would be one worth checking out. I guess you could say this match is a better version of the Sting Vampiro Human Torch match. So yeah, at WWF's Unforgiven 1998, The Undertaker squared off against his brother Kane in a rematch from WrestleMania 14, this time with fire surrounding the ring, and the winner would be the one that gets his opponent to catch fire. A very dangerous match, obviously, but I think for this feud, it actually kind of fit. Undertaker and Kane had the huge backstory with them being brothers, and Undertaker being accused of setting his brother Kane on fire, starting a fire that killed their parents and badly burned Kane, and Kane was back for revenge. So doing a match like this was actually very appropriate. And they actually, to build this match up, they did one of the craziest segments that Raw ever did. One that does not get talked about a lot, surprisingly, but at the time I saw it, it just blew my mind at how crazy it was. Where Kane actually dug up the caskets of the Undertaker's parents, set his father's casket on fire, and then chokeslam the Undertaker in his mother's casket. One of the more disturbing segments ever done on Raw programming, but yeah, this feud, from start to finish, the entire feud that these two had was all about intensity and just being out there, whether it be shooting lightning out of your fingertips or starting fires at the flick of a finger or having druids escort you down to the ring or whatever. It was all about like crazy, horrific stuff with graveyards and caskets and fires and everything else. So that hellish imagery definitely lends itself to Halloween. So Undertaker versus Kane, their feud, even though it would get completely dull and boring by the time 2010 rolled around, for example, it definitely meant something at this point and was still entertaining at this point. And I think the Inferno match is one of Undertaker and Kane's better matches, especially when you consider some of the visuals, like Undertaker soaring over the top of the fires to get to him, and Kane finally catching fire again, and Undertaker being victorious, and the ending post-match where Taker's doing his kneel down in the ring with the ring being surrounded by fire, one of the greatest visuals ever associated with the character. So I thought a lot of good stuff came out of this match, and it is, again, it's perfectly fitting for this season. Man, oh man, how many times am I going to talk about this match? Phoenix versus Mil Muertes in the Grave Consequences match for Lucha Underground's. It was in their first season, and it was kind of the match that got a lot of people to notice them, but I've talked about this match so much, I'll try and keep this brief. Basically, this is the best casket match of all time. Having seen many Undertaker casket matches and various other casket match imitators, in other companies like WCW and TNA, and on the indie scene, Chikara, I remember seeing one from them. This one is the best casket match I've ever seen. A lot of that has to do with the build-up, a lot of that has to do with the talents involved. Mil Muertes is great, Phoenix is great. A lot of it has to do with the theatricality of it, which normally detracts. Like, typically when you go overly theatrical, kind of like the Sting Vampiro match, things go south, but in this case, the little ceremony they did to bring the casket out, and Katrina's involvement, and just the nature of the two characters, specifically Mil Muertes being the man of 1,000 deaths and all of that other stuff, all added to the match and made it extremely entertaining. And it didn't hurt that the match was super violent too. That also helped. So yeah, excellent match, best casket match ever, great stuff, and like I said, best casket match of all time. So as far as I'm concerned, it's perfect to watch at Halloween time. You had to know this was going to make the list. The Chamber of Horrors match from Halloween Havoc 1991. Totally appropriate to have a Halloween Havoc match this high on the list. And this one just takes the cake. It is notoriously one of the worst matches of all time. And boy, oh boy, does it earn its reputation. It's kind of, try to imagine, like the shittiest War Games match you've ever seen, with caskets and ghouls hanging around ringside and an electric chair. That's the Chamber of Horrors match. You had a team led by Sting. It was Sting, the Steiner Brothers, and El Gigante, going up against the team of Big Van Vader, the Diamond Stud, Scott Hall, Cactus Jack, and Abdullah the Butcher. So I have absolutely no memory as to how these four-man teams were made. I have no memory of what the storyline was. I have no idea of the context of any of this. It doesn't really matter. It's so hilarious to me that you have a match that involves, I mean, some big-time wrestling stars, some main eventers. You have Sting in there. You have Scott Hall in there. You have Mick Foley in there. You've got Big Van Vader in there. You've got the Steiner Brothers in there, one of the greatest tag teams of their era. Honestly, the only one in there who's a piece of shit is El Gigante. And, seven can outdo one, make up for the limitations of one. And to be perfectly honest, El Gigante, he's not even the reason this match is bad. Like, you barely notice him in there. It's just there's so much insanity going on in there with, like, there's caskets around ringside, and Sting at one point took off the top of a casket and threw it on top of Cactus Jack, and the match can only end when one member of one of the teams gets locked into an electric chair, you pull the switch, and basically, person gets electrocuted. Sting's team was victorious when Abdullah the Butcher was the one that was electrocuted. Cactus Jack actually flipped the switch thinking that one of the Steiner brothers was in the chair, but Rick Steiner pulled a little switcheroo and switched Abdullah the Butcher into the chair, and Cactus Jack, that poor unwitting fool, pulled the switch. Of course, as many have pointed out, the switch itself came down several times during the match by accident, and the chair didn't go off. So the big spectacle of the electrical light show that they did when the chair's supposed to go off while Abdullah's in it, looked ridiculous. The whole setup looked ridiculous. I mean, the cage itself actually looked pretty cool. Like the actual Chamber of Horrors cage looked fine, but everything else was just silly. It was just one of the silliest matches ever, and I don't know what they were thinking. But again, around Halloween time, it's one that's worth watching just to get you in the spirit. I don't think of it as a really shitty match. Think of it as some of your favorite wrestlers, whether it be Scott Hall, Sting, Steiners, Big Van Vader, Mick Foley, those guys. Think of it as some of your favorite wrestlers having a Halloween party. And that's basically what this match is. It's a Halloween party that got thrown out there to the entertainment of their fans. It's a hoot, to say the least. Honestly, when I was putting this list together, this match right here jumped up instantly as my number one pick. The Undertaker versus Mankind in a Buried Alive match in October 1996 at the In Your House pay-per-view event. They were given the main event spot. Shawn didn't defend the title that night. So we were given this grudge match as the pay-per-view main event. And boy, oh boy, it's actually... I think it's really good. The Undertaker-Mankind feud is one that I really enjoyed in 96 because Mankind felt like a legitimate threat to Undertaker and was doing things like attacking him when Undertaker was cutting his promo while sitting in the casket, and Mankind would run out there, close the casket on him, and start wailing on him. Mankind just seemed like this unhinged psychopath that was a perfect match for Undertaker, who had gone relatively unchallenged for big portions of his babyface run. Like, nobody honestly thought that Kama was going to beat him, for example, or that Kamala was going to beat him, or that Giant Gonzalez was going to beat him, for example. There was a lot of those type of feuds where they were using Taker as kind of a giant killer, but he was really just a big attraction. He wasn't really, his designation of being the most unstoppable guy on the roster wasn't really it wasn't really challenged up until Mankind showed up. And that feud was so great. They had a few crazy matches. Obviously, the Boiler Room Brawl is one that comes to mind, but I think their Buried Alive match was them at their best because it was the right level of... It's theatrical, a little cartoony, but so over the top and perfectly fitting for these two. You had the little grave site set up near the stage where they would try to bury each other. And Undertaker, like I said, he's all over this list. No other character in the history of wrestling embodies the spirit of Halloween more than The Undertaker. I mean, he's just perfect for the holiday. You would think they would have taken advantage of that more frequently around Halloween time. They never really did, but except for situations like this one. But having Undertaker in a match like this is just perfect, and you don't even really question it. It's like, they're going to try and bury each other at a gravesite. Well, yeah, of course. It sounds ridiculous, but it's like, no, it's Undertaker. Yeah, you can do that type of stuff with him. And what really put it over the top for me, while I did enjoy the match, it was the ending where a bunch of heels come out, attack Taker, and bury him. And they throw all the dirt on top of him. And, of course, Undertaker won the match, but the heels attacked him, dug him up, and dug up Mankind, and then threw Undertaker in his place. And they buried him all the way up to the top of the little grave that they had set up. But as the heels left, bolt of lightning strikes the grave, and then the hand of the Undertaker comes out. And that's your visual to end the pay-per-view on. And again, that's one of the more iconic visuals of the Undertaker character when you look back on his career. So, yeah, to me, no other match in wrestling history embodies the spirit of Halloween. And captures all like the imagery and the emotions and feelings and the aura of Halloween more than this one. It's absolutely perfect to watch at this time of year. And if you haven't seen the Buried Alive match before, or if you haven't seen it in a long time, October 31st, pop on the WWE Network, check it out, and have yourselves a good time. Okay, everyone, that's all I've got for you now. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. I'm kind of enjoying doing these top 10 lists, so I want to keep this going as an ongoing series. And I thought with Halloween coming up, this would be a perfect one to do. So, yeah, if you feel that there are any other spooky or kind of even silly Halloween-based matches in wrestling's history that I overlooked, post them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. If I've never seen them before, I'd love to check them out, to be perfectly honest. But, yeah, wrestling, you know, with its over-the-top theatricality, it kind of lends itself to this type of stuff. When you look at characters like Undertaker, like Kane, like Mankind, Raven. Speaking of Raven, Scott Levy is not the only one who can draw inspiration from Edgar Allan Poe. But yeah, you look at characters like Taker, Kane, Mankind, Raven, the Gangrel, or Mil Muertes, and all of those other guys. They really bring an extra dimension to pro wrestling that some other guys don't, and really enhance kind of the sports entertainment side of things. And sometimes it works really well, other times it doesn't work so well, but either way, it's almost always entertaining. However they achieve that is, you know, that's a roll of the dice sometimes. But yeah, that's all I've got for you now. You all have a happy Halloween. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the little bell button down below, and comment and tell me what you think. But like I said, that's all I've got for you now, so peace out.